Whether you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
All right. Welcome to this episode of Doggin. What's up, Mikes? How you guys doing?
Good, all good here.
Good.
Afternoon, ladies. How are you?
Yeah, it's still morning for me. I'm back in Arizona and taking a little break right now, and got a couple meetings this afternoon in Tucson, Arizona. But
Nice.
great to be back and talk pool with you guys. I know, Melina, you've had a busy week or so being out in Sacramento and having
Nothing
fun
like
out there. And
Yeah, you
being in
got to fill us in
California.
on that trip.
Yeah, being in California and on that time zone wrecks me every single time. So this is no exception. But I'm glad to be over there, and I'm glad to be back. So it was a good time.
yeah, well, why
Tell
don't
us-
you tell us a little bit about just kind of getting settled in out there, what you were doing, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the events.
Yeah, without a doubt. It started off. I got a good relationship with Oscar and Desiree, and when they told me, they were going to be doing this 9-ball ranking event, of course, I obviously get excited because I got a lot of familiarity with the room, the atmosphere, and the players are just full of positive energy, and there's just a lot of talent out there. Not to mention the fact that I just love going out there, and the food's always great, and just the room in and of itself. But it was a lot of fun. It wasn't without stress. There was it was a little nerve wracking thinking about how many players we would get, how many we're going to end up showing up the day of. One of the things out there at Hard Times is they don't put a cap on players, so whatever we get is whatever we get. There was a one pocket event that was a lead up to it, and then we ended up having, of course, the main event, which was the 9-ball, and so we'll go into both of them. But
how many players in both events?
I don't remember, to be honest with you, when it comes to and I'm sorry, in the one pocket, it was around 70, 77, something like that.
Yeah, 70 some.
Yeah, quite a bit. But, the matches ended up rolling along pretty well. On the one pocket, I think we ended up getting, it showed 147 on digital pool, but 2 players didn't show up. So it was 145 was the
In the 9-ball?
Was the count for the 9-ball. So, all in all, it was great to see top American players competing. I really enjoyed it. It was nonstop. Every day was just a grind from, I was getting up at 5 a.m. and then whatever time we finished out there is whatever time we finished out there. So Saturday, the 9-ball was probably the longest, but we barreled through from 145 down to 32 within, from starting at 11 a.m. and we were done by like 11:30, 12 o'clock. So
wow. It must have been run with efficiency to get down those kind of numbers.
That's kicking a lot of people out in a day.
Yeah.
So you got to tell me who won the reception contest and the photo of Desiree giving you the death stare. And Oscar
I got to go back and look at it. It was my buddy Chris Constantine. He was taking some photos for a couple of days out there, and then I saw that one, and Desiree is kind of similar to me, where she wears what she's thinking on her at all times. So when I saw that video, and I'm sure I was being a smartass in it, and Oscar's minding his own business, she looked like she wanted to kill me. And we work really hard. We're all pretty relentless at what we do. We're both opinionated, all of us are. So, but we work great together, and I could not be more proud, from working with Oscar and Desiree to Collins and his team out there on the streaming side.
Post up.
Yeah, it was just a phenomenal event. I'm super proud to have been a part of it, and I can't wait to do it again. So, but yeah, I got to find a winner though, because we got some How tips and chalk to give away for it. So I'm excited for that as well. So
yeah. Well, hey, I just want to say hi and welcome everyone who's here. We see you guys in there, and really appreciate you guys tuning in. We got people from Romania, the Philippines, Rick Glasscock from Vegas, our buddies in there. So thanks for tuning in.
Big event, Romania coming up. The IMDb, whatever it is. Yeah, they got a pretty strong event going on right now, or starting.
Yeah. So we're getting thoughts from Melina Mike about his time in Sacramento at the Chuck Mercolis events out there, the one pocket and the 9-ball. And Melina, you said earlier, which I think is kind of interesting, that I guess it's a house rule that they don't cap events out there. they take as many players as possible. Curious to get your thoughts on that. I kind of have mixed feelings on that myself. Like
It
500 people show up, and we're just going to play 24 hours a day.
Well, they guaranteed the money, so it was a lot of risk on their end, for Oscar and Desiree, because if let's say it came up, let's say 50 players, well, then the rest of that money they got to come up with on their own,
Mm.
So, but they trust in their community. They got faith in people out there, and 145. I think the one time when I helped them out at the Brendan Memorial last year, we got I think 184. So to be at
Yeah.
145 was still pretty amazing. But again, it's a lot of risk on their end, without a doubt. But there was.
Speaks to their reputation too, that
Of
that
course,
many
yeah,
people
yeah.
show up out there
I
in
mean,
Northern California for events.
people love supporting them. There's no question about that, and they got a lot of love within that community. In the country in general, but then especially out there in that region. So,
Yeah.
But it made for some stressful times. That was. Oscar was still playing, so Desiree and I were running the tournament, and that was the first time I had ever done anything when it comes to a seeded tournament.
Oh my gosh,
And
you ran a
so
tournament?
and so it
You
it
don't
was.
strike me as the type of person to have the organizational skills to run a tournament. You're a little fly by the seat of your pants. I don't know how that worked.
Number one, I get shit done, but number two, it's easy when you got someone like Desiree who's leading the charge.
Oh,
So
okay.
whatever I could do to support is what my job was, and we gel really well together. But the seating was a big issue. We talked with that gentleman who ran the tournament out there in, what was it, Virginia, I think it was, right, and how they had an issue
Yeah.
and they had to
Yeah.
redraw and all that. We had a problem with digital pool when we had all of our players. The way that it was bringing out the bracket, it had all 12 up top in one area right next to each other, and then it had all the buys underneath that. And then we were talking with Isaac from Digital Pool, and that went on for about 3.5 hours when we're going
Wow.
back and forth. And let's just say it wasn't pretty. Finally, I said, "Listen, we just got to do this the old school way, because I don't got all night to be able to stay at and figure this out. Because by then it's already 10:30 on the West Coast, which would have been 12:30, which is where Isaac was at because he's in Central Time, And so I told Oscar and Desiree, let's just figure out where we're going to put the seeded players at, because there's a formula for that. Let's figure out where the buys are going to go, and then let's just draw names out of a hat. And we did that. And then by the time I got up in the morning, Isaac was already inputting all the names in Digital Pool. So it was a real team effort. A lot of, even though it wasn't as seamless as I would have hoped it would have been, we were all just doing whatever it took to make sure that it went off without a bang. And more importantly, the players were happy, and I didn't hear any complaints, which was really a worry of mine. And the biggest thing for me, working with them, is that we got to make sure, and the same standard for them, that was real important to them, is that make sure the integrity of the tournament is paramount. So I feel like we did it.
Wait a
I'm
minute. You had
proud.
170 pool players in a room, and you said no
Didn't hear any
complaints.
complaints.
I'm not
No.
buying it. I'm not buying it,
No.
Pinozo.
No.
Yeah, no,
No,
it's tough, but we know that we know how accommodating and understanding pool players are. So really shouldn't be that
Yeah.
big a surprise.
Well, no,
That's sarcasm?
they could be
That's
they could be a
sarcasm.
real pain in the ass, that's for sure. But it really wasn't, man. I was
Uh,
that day, especially on Saturday. Well, Friday night and Saturday just flew by. I mean, it was an absolute blur. We started, like I said, we got up in the morning, went to go print out a new bracket so it can be nice and neat, and that was around 8 o'clock. And like I said, we didn't finish till midnight, and I don't remember taking a breath during any of that time. So, but it was very fulfilling because I'm proud of everything that we did. Like I said, from my job was not to screw anything up, and I feel like I accomplished that. And like I said, Desiree led the charge. So, all in all, I do it all over again. So, the players were happy. Everything ran as smooth as we can be, and yeah, I'm proud. So.
Good.
well, let's jump into the events. So it kicked off with the one pocket out there, and tell us how that event played out. I know there was some criticism online. You posted the payouts, and a bunch of people, I guess, coming off the heels of Buffaloes and seeing
Right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're like, oh man, it barely even pays to go to that tournament. And they were,
Right.
I don't think they really understood the purpose of that one pocket tournament and the fact that it was a warm up event. And it was
Right.
designed with a low entry fee to get just a lot of people in that tournament
Right.
playing. So tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a nice mixed bag of top level talent and amateurs. Um, of course, like you mentioned, it was a warm up event leading up to it. The affordability of the tournament is for a purpose. They're there to run a business, and getting people in the door is super important. You know, they got other events that are lined up throughout the year, like a $10,000 added diamond event in October. They got I think it's the Jerry Johnson coming up as well. So they got other one pocket events that are more, you know, this one I think was 1,500 added. So these other ones like in October will be $10,000 added. But they got a lot of players. People had a great time. It was short races. Um, yeah, I mean it wasn't in California. There's no Calcutta to be had. So that's one thing that could have made it a little juicier. I got
They're not
asked if I was
legal.
gonna
They're not
no
legal out there. Mm.
no, and I got asked if I was gonna do something online, but with me working there directly with the event,
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
want to like mess with that at all, go down that rabbit hole. So, um, yeah, I mean, for players that were there, it was great. They were a chance to double dip. It was a lot of like people that I didn't think were going to do so well that did very well, including the winner, Gerson. Mitch Ellerman played great. The guys who I expected to be at the top, like Sky and Billy, they didn't make it to the final. So, but it was a phenomenal event, and I got to see a lot of really solid players. It's a on the tournament side of the room, it's very much one pocket, and that kind of came through. There was a lot of great players that were there. So.
Well, when you think of one pocket, you don't necessarily think of Gerson. So how did he pull it off? What was his strategy?
Well, let's see. He runs balls very well, and he can move balls down table. So, the first time I got introduced to watching Gerson play one pocket was at the Derby. Mike was there,
Right.
and Mike was there when Gerson was playing Efren because Mike was sitting there waiting for
I was
hours.
sweating.
Yeah, Mike
We
was
were
sitting there
set up
waiting for hours to get an interview with Efren.
yeah. As soon as
And
this
that
match is over, we're gonna get an interview, and Gerson would bump all the balls up table, and it was just
every game,
brutal.
Mike, every game. So fast forward 5 months, not a lot's changed. Um, but but Gerson is just as talented, if not more, in the game. He does what he plays to win. I'm not gonna knock the
Yeah,
guy for that because he plays to get the cash and
play within
um,
yourself.
yeah, without a doubt. And he's very aware of the fact that he's not gonna outmove you. He's not gonna outmove some of these top guys, but he can make balls. And he can have a solid cue ball. Um, him and Lucas in the final was pretty awesome because I wanted to see how Lucas played one pocket as well. We actually had to stop the event because it was taking so long, like 3/4 of the way through their match because they were just holding up the 9 ball far too long, which caused a little bit of drama. But they were both very understanding. It really was more drama with Railbirds than anything else, but they were pretty understanding them to themselves. Um, you know, Watching Gerson play Efren at the Derby and a couple of other matches versus watching him now, he's definitely got potential to be a solid player. It's just a matter of how much time that he gets to actually play. When I talked to him before the event, he was saying, "Man, I really wanted to play Buffaloes because he was there." He's like, "But I didn't have a sponsor for the event, because it's $2,000 buy-in." But imagine, because Wolford goes for $2,000 in the Calcutta and gets second place, won like whatever it was, 30, 40,000. Gerson probably would have went for like 500 in the Calcutta, and who knows, he could have went on a Cinderella run himself with as patient as he is. So, yeah, it was a
Well,
good
this
event though.
year, we didn't talk a lot about Buffaloes, or if we did, it was on a show that maybe you guys did without me. But this year it was a little different down there, right? Because it seems like in past years it's a big buy-in event. You get all the best players, and it almost always plays out according to chalk. You get like the Tonys and the Scotts deep in the tournament, and the Alexes and Dennis if he's in the country. It's always like really strong players at the end of it. And this year it was kind of a little bit different. It kind of played out the way this one pocket tournament in Sacramento just played out, right? Where other people kind of got a chance and got in the mix, and there were some upsets and things like that. And so I think that's one thing that this tournament this week kind of brings to the table, right? A low entry fee, short races, and you can get people who you wouldn't typically, not the extreme one pocket grinders, but you can get somebody who could go deep in this tournament who might not necessarily be a one pocket specialist. Would you agree with that?
A 1,000,000%. Yeah. I mean, when you play one pocket on 4.5-inch pockets, all bets are off when you have top guys that are there. And what I mean by that is, like, you could have maybe guys who are more thought of as strong rotation players who could be more threats in a one pocket event versus if it was a little more snug where you're going to have more moving kind of, take the stage more than anything,
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you saw a kid like Lucas, and I hope we get to talk about him coming up because that kid's ceiling is super high, and his game really impressed me over the course of the week, not just in the one pocket, but just in general. A guy like Gerson who runs balls very well, and if they can play within themselves, like Mike said, and not get too careless, on that type of equipment, then it's wide open. It's kind of like how the International is with their one pocket, because I think they play on standard diamonds out there too, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, right? For the International Open.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. So, and for that matter, even rotation being played on 4.5, it opens it up to a lot more players being in the mix, I feel like. So, but yeah, no, I don't got it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a hectic day that day, and I wish I would have been able to watch a little bit more of the one pocket. But what I did get to see was great, man. I got to see Mitch Ellerman play well. I got to see Lucas. I got to see a lot of people who I don't always get to see, and that part I enjoy more than anything.
Yeah, nice.
Speaking of Mitch Ellerman, did you happen to see that Facebook post? So he puts out a Facebook post where he's calling out Arizona to play a big one pocket set, and it's just the way it goes in Arizona. If somebody's calling out the state, Scott Frost puts a post up and replies, and basically he's like, "I heard Mitch is calling me out." And it's like,
I don't know how it got there. By the way, something's missing on that score. Yeah,
it was funny. Like, I didn't interpret it that way at all. Like, when I saw Mitch's post, I'm thinking, oh, he's probably calling out everybody but Scott Frost in the state to play one pocket. And Scott views it as he's calling me out. Let's go. Let's get it on. And so I saw Scott's post in there, and it was funny. And I ribbed Mitch a little in that post because I don't know if you remember, but when Nick DeLeon had been playing Mitch, it beat him a couple times. Apparently Mitch left notes at the bar, saying he wants to play Nick DeLeon. And so I said on Scott's post, I said, I don't think Mitch is leaving notes at the bar for you, but I would love to see you two play. It'd be a great matchup. I don't know if you caught that one, Mikey.
I did. I saw the comment in there, and I didn't get the reference at the time, but now that you tell the backstory, I certainly do, and I remember that. Mitch is playing solid, man. Mitch looked really comfortable out there in Sacramento. I thought he was going to snap it off, to be honest with you. He was one player. There was a few players like early days when I'm watching them just kind of hit balls and, knock them around that I thought, man, he's just hitting them really good and got a lot of confidence and he can make a run. And I was real surprised because I did not expect him there. But for that matter, I didn't expect Lucas or Gerson to be there either, So, it was interesting. But I'd hope to see Mitch and Scott play just for the barking, if nothing else, during the match.
Right.
Yeah.
By
the way, Mahai, I see you in the comments there. Shoot me a message if we can communicate, if we can coordinate and do some stuff out there for the Bucharest event. I'd love to talk with some guys out there for sure. So, and we are, for that matter, working on doing some stuff for the Spanish Open that's coming up as well. I've been already talking with Matchroom's media guy to possibly get David or Josh on the show ahead of it, preferably David, because obviously he's from Spain. So, but yeah, we are going to be doing stuff for that. We're going to be talking WPBA on this show as well, along with a few other things going on. It's going to be a busy week, and it's barely getting started.
Well, let's get to the main event out there, the 9-ball. And, as I'm hearing you talk about Lucas, and obviously Shane Wolfert won it, we're going to talk about that. Sky Woodward was in the finals, and it almost seemed like a perfect place to evaluate the future of the U.S. Moscone Cup team, right? Because you had a lot of Yeah, you have a lot of young U.S. players who are all, kind of on the cusp of making that jump to the next level and maybe being on that team. And so, just general thoughts, Melina, about the depth of the U.S. field, especially the hopefuls for the Moscone Cup from that event.
Optimism. That's what comes to mind. Where, I mean, you guys know me. I don't want to sugarcoat anything, or anything like that. I see a lot of guys, young men, who are mentally tough and who can go out there and compete, and that's what you want. I don't think from a no one's gonna be comparing hardware with the Europeans on the American side, at least not right now. The only I feel like hope when it comes to getting titles, the obvious Shane, maybe Sky, and then Wolford comes to mind because we saw his run recently at the UK Open, but there's not been any consistency there, so I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But you want guys who are going to be able to compete with anyone and who can handle the heat. There was a few guys that come to mind now that I didn't think before that they necessarily were there yet, but I'm very hopeful and optimistic for sure. So, what do you think, Mike?
No, it's a good point about evaluating U.S. talent on events like this, because you're going to get, you know, even though like a Shane's not there, you're going to get top U.S. players, and the young guys who want to take a shot at everybody and see how they stand and kind of,
Right.
feel their way through it. That was a really good opportunity. And they're just matching up against other Americans. They're not all running into Josh in the third round and FSR in the fourth round, whatever.
Right.
So it's a good opportunity for Americans to kind of measure themselves, almost like a U.S. Open-ish kind of thing for American players. So from that standpoint, it was good. Saw some names that I, really don't know anything about in there.
Like who, Mike?
I don't know who's the player who ran over Lucas in the round of 16 was
My man Francis. I try to get
Rita
Francis
Rita.
to
I just love
yeah,
that his name is Rita Rita.
and that is his name. Yeah, so Francis is a local out there, and really his game is more one pocket than anything else. Francis is a very strong player, but he plays one pocket really well. I was surprised because I thought he was a dark horse to snap off the one pocket. And then he goes 2 and out in that event, and then of course he just steamrolled Lucas in the 9 ball. Francis can play
Yeah.
pool. Francis is a very strong player. I tried to get him to do a little interview, but he was dodging me like Albin dodges me when I can
How
put a
old is
camera
he?
on him. So he's got to be around my age. Yeah. So
Oh, Lord Hill.
but yeah. But he plays real well. But that match in particular, I mean, he was breaking and running, man. What are you gonna do?
Apparently, 9
Yeah.
nothing is a pretty sound beating. How did he fare against Gerson? Because the digital pool doesn't have the final score in there.
Well, that would have been my job to input the final score in there. So
Well,
thanks for
it's
that.
zero. It's 0-0. So it's one hell of a lag that they're doing.
Yeah. No, I don't remember, to be honest with you,
Okay.
because it was a mix of
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was
different
just
tournament,
curious
but
whether he gave him a match or got steamrolled. So,
yeah.
but obviously he had a good tournament.
Lucas was a lot of players' picks to do well in that event, and I think to some extent maybe he came up short when it comes to the 9 ball part of it. But he had been playing a lot of pool. It wasn't just the tournament. I mean, that kid was staying in the grease too throughout that as much as he can. And if you know
Mhm.
Lucas, he likes to gamble on himself playing pool. So, but yeah, it really didn't. Even though it wasn't necessarily the result that maybe he had hoped for, I still took a lot out of that kid's game from the week. Him more than anyone. Like Wolford, I had already seen a little bit. Coming from the UK Open, and we had been talking about like just seeing steps coming from Buffaloes, and just that he had been playing really well. Lucas to me showed he can really play some pool, and that kid is hitting them, as Oscar would say, spicy. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you had a lot of other players in that event too that, are always their names are always brought up around the Moscone Cup discussion, like Billy Thorpe, right? Can he get back in there this year? Hunter Lombardo, somebody in the comments brought his name up. You have BJ Ussery made the trip out there. I'm curious to see what you thought of his play out there, Mike. I know it's not kind of common for him to go to the West Coast and
Right.
play a tournament. So, what were your thoughts on BJ's performance?
He's hungry to make some wins. he thinks he can get there, and I think he can get there too, for that matter. I don't think that Virginia event was not a blip on the radar. That's what that guy can do. And mind you, in that event, I think Federer was there amongst a few others, so it wasn't just American based like this event necessarily was.
Right.
What I will say is that, um, if there was anything that I wish would have been different, it's seeing players rack the balls, because for an event like this, you know, there's logistics and finances when it comes to having referees racking the balls. But I want to say at the other couple of events, they had people that were volunteering to be referees and that were racking the balls for it. So seeing these guys rack them up is a little different, because we obviously know that players can manipulate the rack to make a more favorable breaking, percentage wise on their end. And when you have a winner break format, that can really punish you. I saw a lot of guys putting a lot of effort when it came to racking the balls, but at the end of the day, who you expected to be there was there, And BJ ran
Yeah.
into Shane. I think he told me maybe he made one mistake, and before you knew it, he was down like 7-2 or something.
Yeah.
Going to 9, I think it was. So, and that's a combination of Shane playing phenomenal, and then of course maybe the racking along with that. So, the guys did their job though, right? They made the best of their opportunities. So, but BJ is a great player though. I mean, he can punish you for sure.
Yeah.
So let's get into the finals, Mike, because when you see the finals, you see Sky Woodward and Shane Wolford. I think most people would favor Sky Woodward in that match, and kind of feel like, hey, this is going to be a win for Sky, right? And I tuned in. I happened to tune in. You'll never believe when I tuned in. I tuned in on like the 7 ball of the last rack. And I got to see that cut shot that Wolford made when he got back to the table, and then he won it. And the guys on post up are like, "Oh, it's over! It's gonna be over! He's gonna win it!" And I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I tuned in right now." But I tuned in, and Shane Wolford won it. He must have played well. Going into that match, did you feel like he had a chance to win that match, or were you thinking pretty much like I was, like, yeah, this guy's probably gonna take it?
Um, yeah, I was probably like in your guys' camp, thinking that Sky's the favorite. They're obviously friends, so I feel like the pressures may be a little different when you're playing against your buddy, because it's not as intense, and it's not, the it's just different. You know how it is when you're playing against your boy, and so, um, but yeah, I mean, he showed a lot of moxie in his ability to come back, because Sky had him in a hole, and I kind of thought, okay, this is what I expected it to be. Wolford comes back and makes it a match, but then I still wasn't necessarily sold on like he was gonna get across the finish line. He really showed, as the Europeans would say, his bottle, and
Yeah.
what he can do when pressure is tight. There was a lot of deep breaths there. I was sitting, front and center. I wasn't behind in the booth with Collins and them, but I was right in front of that match. You can tell like he was really going through his processes and trying to just put him away. And at the end, he came away with a victory, and against Sky, which we all know how great Sky is playing. So, yeah, I mean, kudos to Wolford. I still don't think he's made the team, but I think he's in the best spot that he can be right now. And if it started next month, he's on my team 1,000,000%. A
Well, I know
million percent.
last year after Earl was picked, right? You had Earl picked the last 2 years, but last year after the Earl pick, uh, Wolford went online and had some comments about it. You could tell he was just disappointed, right?
Yeah.
Disappointed that he wasn't selected. I'm curious to get Pinozzo's thought for this year. Is he in the driver's seat, Pinozzo, to get on that team? What do you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, at this point, you got to believe that it's kind of his to lose a spot, whether it's automatic or a captain's pick. It becomes you know all wild card picks with US because Shane and Sky are going to take 2 of the 3 top point spots, right? So whether he gets the third point spot or whether he gets picked, I think right now he'd have to really tank the rest of the year, or a couple players would just have to go on ridiculous runs through the second half of the year to get, to take its spot away from him. I think he's shown that he's put in the time and the effort to kind of be in consideration. He was in serious consideration last year, and this year he's improved. So if you're a captain and you've got a choice between, an older guy who's got experience and has been on Moscone, or take the younger guy and start getting him some play in Moscone Cup, I think this time they're going to take the younger guy. So I would be really surprised. He'd have to really play poorly the rest of the year to not get on. I'm disappointed that he is not going to be in Spain for the Spanish Open.
Was really surprised, Mike, not seeing that name.
Yeah, well, he said he told me that he looked up flights there and it was going to be $6,500.
Yep.
To get there.
He needs to not fly business class. Tell him to get back. I was going to say,
or you need to book your ticket, more than 2 weeks ahead of time. So I don't know. So I don't know what the specifics were that caused him to get those type of flight things, but prices. But we know that it's an expensive nut, and he's probably seeing where he can play and picking his spots. I don't know if I forgot to ask him if he's already got a ticket bought for the European Open, because that's Europe at the end of in August, which is vacation time in Europe. So those can't be cheap flights either. So we'll see. But I think that, again, I think that he's in there enough and playing well enough to make one of those 5 spots his to lose. What do you think, Mike?
It's got to make sense, man. I'm not going to knock the guy for making a smart financial decision. I actually will give him props for being more responsible in that regard, because that him above anyone else, I feel like this is the time to strike. This is the time to keep on playing. This is a major event. This is time to continue to keep yourself a part of that conversation. But if it don't add up, it don't add up. And in a lot of these events, getting final 16 isn't making you any money. That's the reality of it from guys that are traveling from here in the States.
Right, but that comes down to where your money's going. Is your money going into getting a return on that tournament, or is your money going to making Moscone Cup in Shane's case? Okay, so even though it would cost them, in a normal airfare, because I guarantee you, Tyler and Billy Thorpe, they're not paying $6,000 to fly over there. But if your nut is $4,000 and you make 3 for finishing 16th,
well, I think someone take
3.
that.
That's 3 towards your Moscone Cup points, which in U.S. rankings we know is a big chunk for other players to try to make up. So it kind of depends on how you're measuring it out. Again, I got to believe that he was not committed early enough to get a ticket that made sense.
Yeah, well, he's still a young guy. So, figuring all of that out, that's the intangibles that, like someone like a Shane Van Boening, he's got his itinerary planned, well in advance, and all of that's kind of
but it's also different for a guy like Shane, because
guys.
he's playing the World Cup of Pool, Joey, as well. So he gets more value out of that trip versus, and a part of being the World Cup of Pool is that you get guaranteed money along with that, know. So
no, I'm just saying though, traveling internationally for Shane Wolford is like what, 2 years? 2 years now he's been doing that. And so, I remember I actually first saw him for the first time like 4 years ago in Maryland playing in the Scotch doubles tournament, and him and a young guy named Nathan Childress, and everybody's like, yeah, these two guys are great. They're going to win this tournament. They're the best thing in the world. And I'm like, okay, they're great. I'm watching them. They played great. And Nathan played great. Shane played great. I kept asking people who's better. Nobody could really give me a definitive answer. But this shows that like Shane has really stuck with it and been committed to getting to the top of the game. And one thing I love about Shane, well, the reason I say that is because, Nathan is still a good player out there, but he hasn't made the same strides that Shane Wolford has, is what I'm trying to say. And the thing that I really respect about Shane Wolford, when I talk to, just my kids getting better in soccer, my daughter in gymnastics, I tell them, like, keep a journal and keep track of how you're progressing, because progress is not linear. It's not like you're going to finish 16th in this tournament and 8th in this tournament and 4th in this tournament and 3rd in this tournament. You're going to have those times like Shane had last year, if you remember, started the year real strong and then kind of had a let up and didn't perform, or at least didn't get the results quite the same that he did. And but what did he do? He kept at it. And it seems like he's got this temperament to persevere, to not worry about what people are saying, and just keep working, keep working. And I think we're seeing a payoff right now with his first matchroom win. So I'm really excited for the kid. I think, yes, he is on the inside looking out right now. It's nothing's decided, obviously. He can get there on points, he could get selected, and he still has to keep working. But I think it's his to lose at this point, for sure.
I mean, I can appreciate like what Mike is saying as far as that philosophy of integrating younger players, and I saw a comment from Alex Laley saying the same thing, online.
Yep.
But even with that aside, on his own merit, that kid's on a spot for me right now, and I'm with Mike, just but it's even more because of that philosophy as well. So it's a combination. Um, you know, pool can be kind of hot or cold, right? You can have a kid, you could have a, I don't know who all's there. I think it's Billy, Hunter, Tyler. You know, you could have one of these guys go on a really big run, and let's say, and then what are you gonna think? Man, I wish I would have gone.
Yeah.
And someone can play their way
Yeah.
into a conversation where maybe they weren't before. I get it from a bottom line standpoint. But man, of all the guys that I hope to see on that list when it comes to Americans, he was probably at the top of it, of players that I really wanted to see go out there and play again, because I want to see
Yeah.
I want to see, can he follow up the UK with another one? I want to see, can he capitalize on his momentum that he's got right now from the Chuck and go out there and dance some more. I
Yeah.
want to see another Mario he win. I want to see another Fortunsky type
Right.
battle from him. I
Right.
want to see more of that, because then that just shows that, hey, he's really just putting his stamp on, I'm here, I belong, I'm a part of that core five that needs to be on that team come this December. But again, you can't hate on a guy from, not wanting to
This
go
No,
before he
no,
got
yeah,
that kind of money.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
this is the brilliant thing about the Moscone Cup, right? It happens at the end of the calendar year. And all year long, like, we're talking about Shane Wolford right now, he's coming off a big win. But last year, I think it was September, we're talking about Greg Hogue, you know? So all year long, you're going to have events and you're going to have people pop up and do something great. And then all of a sudden they enter the conversation. So it's going to happen. There's going to be other people enter the conversation. It might be after the Spanish Open, especially since Wolford won't be there, but that's what makes this awesome all year long, is getting to, talk about the prospects and who's in contention and who's not, or maybe who should have went to this event or that event. But I'm telling you, Shane Wolford
Well,
needs to be on the team this year.
this is
Yeah.
part of why, like, this is part of why Matchroom's events stay relevant all year long, is
Yeah.
because there's always something to play for, whether you're an American or European, or for that matter, you're in another part of the country, or another part of the world, and you're fighting for, World Cup of pool spots or points to be on there, So, whereas like the Pro Billiard Series, I don't know what they're working for, I don't, I know that they have their own rankings, but I don't know what they're
They don't have
towards.
that signature event at the end of the
Yeah,
year.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
What everyone's kind of building up for. So, I love the conversation. You know, the same people who we're talking about now aren't going to be who we're talking about in November. And it's not to knock anyone. It's just from an odd standpoint, someone's going to fall off the map. Someone's going to, kind of disappear. And then someone else ought to go, and probably will go and make a name for themselves as well, and play their way into that conversation with the same hand. So, it's a part of sports, right? In all things. So, but a kid like Wolford and a kid like Lucas on that team, for me, would really change it up, because they got a lot of fight. They're not going to be winning the UK Open right now, but race the 5-9 ball, they can get there with anyone. They really can. I'm a believer in those two, and I think that they're just further making names for themselves for their character, how tough they are. And those are the kind of things that you want, because intangibles, I'm going to weigh intangibles a lot more for Americans more than I would for Europeans.
So it
Just me.
sounds like Lucas is probably like a dark horse for you that you would have getting on that team. I'm curious for Pernozzo, like who would be a dark horse for you at this stage in the game for the U.S.
I think, to me, like Lucas is that kind of dark horse. I mean, it's hard to call Billy or Tyler, a dark horse. Dark horse, you're probably looking at BJ, Lucas, those two guys mostly, right? So that'd be a good horse race from now to the end of the year to see which one of those two, does the
Earl?
best in. Yeah.
What about Earl?
which,
Is that it?
which one of
Is
those
that
two does the
experiment done? Is that experiment done?
I hope
Oh, I
so.
think so. I think that, yeah, that's yeah.
I hope so.
It was done a year late, but it's done.
Well,
So,
somebody mentioned Justin Martin.
well, Justin
Justin
Martin,
Martin's
again, it comes down now to if you're going to prove yourself between now and Judgment Day, you got to be in the mix with everybody. So, Justin, I understand. Justin told me earlier, I'm going to the Philippines. This is what I need to do. This is how I'm going to improve my game. I'm not going to worry
Which I
about
love, by
chasing
the way.
points.
I love that.
I want to go learn how to be a better pool player. I want to find that magic spot, right? So, more power to him for doing that. That does kind of, it's an out of sight, out of mind thing.
Well,
But
but imagine he could be one of these players who comes back from the Philippines for being gone the first half of the year, and then comes and makes some waves, on the 11th hour.
okay, so my point is though is that are these guys going to come back and play in some of the international events? Are they going to come back and we're going to see them in, the Markulis 2 and the international, and that's pretty much it. If that's the case, then it's still just at that point just kind of a gut feeling on who's going to play. I would like to see Justin Martin, Lucas, and BJ play in more than just the international. I want, obviously you would assume they're going to play, they're all going to play in the U.S. Open. So you got the U.S. Open and the international that would give these guys a chance. The international is after the pick, though, right? This year. So that's not going to have any impact. So you've got the U.S. Open.
What's the deal with like Penoza with your connections with Matchroom? What's the deal with the captains? What do you know? What can you tell us? When are they going to choose captain?
With my deal with Matchroom? What am I on the
your
payroll?
Connections? Yeah, like leveraging your journalistic connection.
Well, Emily said it. And at this point, I got to believe her. She said it a million times. Listen, the captain's not that big a deal to pick anymore, because the event. There's so many events. There's so many points at stake. Guys are earning their spots on it. Or it's not this thing where you've got to pick someone 6 months out like Mark used to have to do and like Johan used to have to do and get a training camp put together and all that. You're going to be able to have these guys who essentially you got your top 3 picks that are on merit. And the next 2 are essentially going to be on merit. They're going to be most likely the 4 and 5 guys, or unless because I don't see an out of the blue Earl pick coming this year. So how important is it to have the captain named early? I think that Matchroom's got enough on their plate these days where it's like, okay, I'm just going to, we'll worry about that in August. There's no need to worry about it before August.
So I saw the post by Alex Lely that you were talking about, Melina. And the first thing I thought when I saw that post is he resigned from the European captainship. Mm-hmm. But was that post kind of a way of putting his name in the hat for the U.S. captainship?
Who, Alex?
Yeah.
Of course he would. I don't know if that's, I don't know if he sent in a court application, for the U.S.
Freshen up your resume.
But yeah, what the hell? So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all, plays out. Emily had said she's gotten, more applications for the U.S. spot than for the European spot. I would kill to know who all those applications came from, because some of them got to be, your buddy Mike Siegel or someone like that. It was just like,
Melina Mike,
do a bang up job,
top and center. Melina Mike, U.S. captain. Let's go.
Listen, it's about talking points, because they're and guys who have reputations for success, guys who are winners and who have proven results. Find me a box that does not check off for Alex Lely. Now whether or not he wants the gig or not, I don't know. It sounded like in December, or whenever we talked to him, December into January, we had him on the show afterwards, it sounded like he was done. But would I love to see him coach the Americans? 1,000,000% I would. You know,
Would you
I
rather
would,
see him
because
coach the Americans, him or Johan?
um, oof,
I'm going with
I'm
Johan.
I'm gonna go with the no comment. um, you know, but at the same time, listen, I would love to see Germany go back out there and take another swing and
Yeah.
get a W as well. So, um,
For the
I'd,
record, we're not firing Jeremy Jones, okay?
right,
We
yeah. I
both
want to
like
make that
Jeremy
clear.
Jones,
Yeah,
no
a
doubt
million
about it.
percent. Yeah, it's but yeah, I think you can't go wrong with either one of them. There's some. It's whether or not these guys want it as well. So but if there's somebody new in the mix, well, those will be great talking points as well. And especially more than anything, like if you're the European coach and you're brand new, good luck to you. There's going to be a lot of heat on your ass. You
Well,
better win.
that's one of the reasons when Alex posted that, I was thinking, well, maybe he's positioning for the U.S. captain role. And maybe the stress that he felt, or at least we sensed when he did resign and we talked to him like the next day, thanks to Penozo,
Yeah,
maybe that was the fact of dealing with, the pressure of being on a team that's expected to win and dealing with those personalities that, maybe he feels like he could have a more of a role on the US team of kind of being that coach and mentor to these younger players. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure he
I,
feels like he could have more of an impact on the
Yeah.
U.S. than he can have on Europe because Europe's so dialed in already. But who knows? It'll be interesting to see. I personally, I kind of hope they give Jeremy another shot. I think
agreed.
he's kind of earned his stripes and hasn't been a disaster, and he's gotten a lot out of these guys, and I think they believe with him. I mean, I'm curious to think,
Well,
if
if
all of a
if
sudden,
we
if all of a sudden
if
Matchroom named Alex Laley as the U.S. coach, how would that go over in the U.S. with the players? Do you
I
think?
think it's different
I think
now.
it'd be all right.
I think it's different now than what it was when they named Johan coach for the year, because Johan caught and Matchroom caught a ton of heat for that, and then all of a sudden he wins a Moscone Cup. The he can do no wrong. And but at the beginning, people were going to have those snap reactions to it and snub their nose at it, but I think it'd be a great pick. But if somehow Jeremy's not the American captain, we're gonna get the joy of seeing him in the comm box, as they say, throughout the whole event. So I'm be appreciative and glad of that as
Well,
well.
I
It's
think
win-win.
So
I
yeah,
think
win-win. Yeah,
the strange announcement of him and Carl being player ambassadors and not really understanding totally what that is, and now it taking so long to choose captains is the only reason we're talking about this, right? Like, I think the assumption was that Jeremy would be the captain again. I don't think he's done anything wrong per se, and he seems to be doing a decent job, and I think we all want to see him get another chance. But now there was this big announcement and he's the player ambassador. We don't really know what that means, and does that rule him out from being the captain?
yeah. But Jeremy, more than anyone, understands sports so well, not just pool. So he would tell you, hey, listen, I haven't won. So I understand if they went a different
Yeah.
direction, because he's that type of guy. I'm sure he wants to be there and he wants to swing at it, but Jeremy's definitely a realist and a no bullshit kind of guy. I really respect the hell out of him for that, because there was a couple of times when we spoke with him throughout the last, as I think last year, maybe the year before, where we asked him tougher questions like that. What happens if you don't perform? And he told it like it was. So um you know this is what Matchroom's created, though. It's June and we're talking about captains. You know, so
Yeah,
let's be
that's
smart,
that's the marketing of it, and that's Moscone Cup is turned into a 12-year process. I mean, a
right?
12-month process, and that's what they want. But yeah, I mean, there is thought that is Jeremy enough of their Matchroom team now that they don't want him to be captain? He's a little different position than Carl, because I think Carl's more of an employee as opposed to Jeremy just being kind of a contractor. So so there's a little difference there, but who
I think
knows what
he's
their
just as
plan is
integrated
going
in that
forward.
fabric of that team. You know, I know
The Matchroom team.
Carl wears a lot of hats. But
Yeah, I think that there's more responsibility and more demands on Carl, like as an employee, more so than Jeremy as, we're going to fly you over here. You're going to do the commentary and do a couple of interviews and whatever. But, Carl's in a different level as far as the matchroom, staffing goes.
I think in recent years, we're starting to see Jeremy, though, make matchroom his priority, right, over other events and different things that he could do. If there's a conflict with matchroom.
One of my points is, listen, you still see Jeremy do commentary everywhere for everything. Okay, if he gets a Carl role,
I haven't seen him do commentary for Predator in 2 years.
If he gets a Carl role at Matchroom, he's not doing anything with anybody else but Matchroom. So that's when you'll know that the employment level has shifted.
What do you mean, Mike?
Well, I mean, Emily has talked about it before. When you hire someone, you can control them. Okay, if you're someone's just a contractor, you can still only yell at them so much, tell them so much. They just, they don't hit. So it's a different level, and they're at that level with Carl. Carl's a matchroom guy now, and he's like pretty much an employee, and so he can get yelled at, told what to do. Jeremy's not at that. So it's just a little bit different. Like I said, if it gets to the point
I'm not a matchroom employee, and Lord knows I've gotten yelled at a couple times.
Get in line, buddy.
Yeah, right. It's a long one, that's for sure. No,
yeah,
but
this is some of Carl's recent Facebook posts about the 9-ball, 10-ball thing. He's like, yeah, somebody decides to add an extra ball to the table, and we're calling that pool. And, it's like, it's funny. But I have a feeling if you asked Carl before all this, he probably would have preferred 10-ball. But I'm just guessing.
Well,
just guessing.
Yeah. Maybe. Carl is from the UK. He's an English. He's a 8-ball player in his blood. So that will never die. But anyway, guys, there was another event going on this week, and it was for the ladies outside of the World 9-ball ranking event out in California. So let's dive into that. Let's show the ladies some love as well. I think Kelly ended up taking down Christina Tkach in the final. Yep. I didn't get to see a whole lot of it, but I got to see bits and pieces here or there. Mike, what was your takeaway from the event?
Well, it's kind of, there's a status quo in the WPBA events that is, you look at the end of the event, you're going to see Kelly, and you're going to see Wei Wei, and you're going to see Christina Tkach, and you're going to see Christina Zateva. And that's kind of the way it runs, right? And that's pretty much the way it ended up here. There were some other players who made some pretty nice runs. April Larson had a couple good wins, and
Kaylee McIntosh. Yeah.
Kaylee McIntosh. There were some good runs by some of the other players, but in the end, you still get down to what did Kaylee McIntosh finish fourth? Fifth, sixth.
Something like that.
So you had Kelly, and you had Christina Tkach, and you had Wei Wei, kind of the same old thing. So glad to see that there's still enough events and that they're playing. There are a lot of women in there swinging and taking their shots. A lot of American women, trying to build up their resume, trying to take down one of these players every now and then. And the more opportunities they get, the better chance that's going to finally happen, right? So you just like that there's more events, and there's more. The level is still here, and where you've got to get. So that's what I take away from it. And I'm looking forward to seeing Christina Tkach win one of these events. She's been knocking at the door. She had that heartbreaker against Allison in the semifinal in Wisconsin. Went through the winner's bracket here, and then they just played a 1-set final, and Kelly ended up beating her. I'm looking forward to seeing her snap one of these off.
With the women, it's interesting. You got like a 2-tiered system, right? And there's that top tier, and I really don't see anybody from that second group being able to win one of these events. No disrespect to them. They're fine players. But the only exception to that would be one of these younger players who makes a leap in their game and just comes out and has the event of their life. And then maybe they elevate to that top tier. But right now, there's just like 2 classes of pool players in the female game. And I mean, it's amazing what Kelly Fisher's done for all these years, and she just keeps at it. She'll get knocked in a loser's bracket, and it's okay. I'll just win it from here, and like she did in this tournament, and she comes and wins this event. Christina was playing great by all accounts. I was following her on social media. She looked very confident, and then she loses to Kelly in the finals. I think Christina's in that top tier. Especially
You're talking about Tkach or
with these WPBA events, she's in that top tier. And she's going to get there. She's going to win it. But right now, Kelly Fisher's just so darn tough, and it doesn't seem like she has any indication of slowing down. So that's just the way I see it.
Yeah,
Kelly's timeless, and she's just as much of a juggernaut as she was 10 years ago when she won the World 10 Ball.
She's just such a competitor. I mean, she's a
thoroughbred, Mike.
Yeah.
The only time she struggles is when we have her on the show and tell her how great she is, and then the next tournament she comes out and dogs it. I don't know if you remember that.
Funny.
I agree with you guys, though. It's a lot of the same ladies there at the end every single time. You're going to see some of these girls start to take steps, and they're putting in the groundwork, and the Kayleys and Savannahs and Sophias and a few other like Brittany and just Carolyn Powell. There's a lot of ladies who can be in the conversation late in the event, but then there's always the same ones that are there at the end, it seems like. So I would love to see it be kind of along the same lines as the World 9 Ball, where it was that deep, where you had a lot. They mentioned that event going on, the European Championships for women. I'd love to see a lot more of these ladies from Asia and Europe come over, and then I guess I would be a little more interested than what I am right now, because when I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, on Sunday I'll see,
Kelly,
Allison, Kelly, Christina. Obviously, Wei and a couple others, but
it does seem like most of the field is playing for like
right.
sixth place, right? Most of the field is if they play their best, they're going to get sixth place, fifth, sixth.
Fifth, sixth, fifth, sixth is.
Eventually, there's going to be a point where like these ladies are going to start making strides. I'm going to be like Joe.
No,
hold on,
no.
You of all people, because I was about to just
look, Mike. Carolyn Powell's a fine player. Okay, she's been doing this for a very long time. She's not going to make strides and start winning these events. I'm sorry. No disrespect
for someone
to her
like for someone like that, right? And it was the same with Jennifer.
She's gonna if she has a good event, she's gonna finish fifth, sixth.
Yeah,
that's my point. But the only exception to that are going to be these young stars that are coming up.
Yeah.
The Savannahs.
Oh,
the Kayleys, the
Kennedys. You get her enough shots at these.
Skylar has
one of those matches one of these days.
Once these kids start coming up and they get fifth, sixth, then all of a sudden they get third, fourth, and then they get second. Then they're going to be in the conversation. And so that's really the only hope to unseat this group of elite class players that you have in the women's game.
Just like that one legendary run at the Expo Joey Ryan had that one year,
It's a super billiard.
I don't remember that.
Before every year it was just over. He started making more strides, higher and higher.
I was gonna use this example, Mike. I was gonna use this example, but I was like, he's gonna give me a hard time about the Super Billiards Expo. But when I used to compete on the Planet Pool Tour, I was good enough that if I played my best, I'd get fifth, sixth, and that's the way I feel for a lot of these women players that are like they're pros. They're going to be pro players. They're pro players. They play in these events, but they're 40, 45 years old, 35 years old. They've been playing for 10, 15, 20 years competitively, and they're just not going to get there. They're just not.
And I agree with you on that. And it's just a matter.
There's a lot more ladies we're not going to get on the show now after this whole monologue by Joey.
And I'm sitting here thinking, like, Carolyn Powell seems like a really nice lady, and I only brought her name into it because you said her name, and so I was just use her as an example, right? She's a fine player, she's a fine regional player, okay, but to say that she's in the upper echelon of female pro players,
I don't know if I can. I feel like the younger you are, the more you have upside, but as much as you can talk about these young American women who have potential to make strides, let's not forget. I want to say Carolyn's the number one ranked American woman.
Yeah, and I
Today.
would take her against
So
Savannah. I would take her against Savannah Easton if they played, 8 days a week. But in 5 years from now, which one you taking?
Right. Not even 5 years from now. So it's
less than that.
listen, we've gone through that
3.
before. That's why I said before, the most encouraging thing about this, even though we see the same women in the top four, there's like a 6-woman rotation in the final four. The more events there are, the more likely it is that sooner or later a Kaylee McIntosh, an April, Savannah, whatever, are going to start breaking through and take down one of the bigger players. And then the next tournament, they might take down 2 of them. So it's a process. And
well,
yeah, it's
April may not
going to be geared toward the younger players, right? The younger players are who we're going to have to watch out. That's why I just hope that there continues to be a lot of opportunities with the women in America every year, that a lot of these top European players are still playing in, and Asian players are still playing in, so that they can get that experience and eventually knock off those players. You're right. It's not going to be Caroline Cow. It's not going to be Jennifer Beretta. It's not going to be, these players like that who, I don't care what they're ranked as far as WPBA or Top American goes. It's
Fine players.
It's like being the top. It's like it's kind of the Alvin Gilbert syndrome. The best 3-cushion player during a period of time when the top American 3-cushion player was still
showing your age, Mike,
in the equation with 3-cushion players in Europe, right? Yeah. They just weren't in it was apples and oranges. So it's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, you mentioned April, but I don't think April was in. I thought April was an exception to play this event because she's sponsored by Iron City. If I want to see, so I don't know how many more WPBA events she'll be playing.
I think sooner or later we're going to see her in more of these events. I mean, you hope so. Yeah. But she had a good, she had a good event.
I get the premise though, and and you guys are right, but it's.
Wait, can I record that? Hold on, can we record that?
You guys are right.
Yeah, you guys are for once in your life. Listen, we got a lot of shows. We got a lot of shows coming up this week. I got a show with Shane Tyree coming up, maybe even today. A bunch of juniors that I'm going to be doing for the junior event we're going out to at the end of next month. We're going to have a Spanish Open show, preview show, maybe get David. If these suckers are interested in getting robbed again for a draft, we're going to have a draft show as well. So we have a ton of other things to go and discuss. This is just the beginning. I'm barely getting home, but we appreciate each and every one of you guys for coming in. And I do appreciate you 2 donkeys for making time for me on the fly like this as well. So thank you.
And
boys.
If you guys want to support the show, head on over to Patreon. It's patreon.com/dogginit. DOGGINIT. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
See you later.